Huda TV is launching a new website for you, your family and friends. Everyone. A new look, top-level designs and better technology. You will be able to ping Huda TV's new website and read all our articles, surf our video archives, chat live on Huda's forum, vote, support our programs, and give us your suggestions or criticisms. We welcome your thoughts. We strive to please all our viewers worldwide. Huda, a light in every home.
There's so much that we can do for so many who are in need. Give our time, give our wealth, give our love, give ourselves.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the Fiqh of Zakah. Before, in the previous segment, we were speaking about the zakah itself. What does it entail? What is the zakah? What's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala speaking to us about this? We were joined by Sheikh Muhammad Salah. Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Wa alaikum salam wa
Sheikh, you left on a very poignant point. I didn't want to go for a break, but a very important point. And you were speaking about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala telling us that khud, take, okay, from their sadaqah. Now, before we go and look into this detail, a question always comes, Sheikh. What is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala really telling us, rulings-wise, regarding zakah, Sheikh?
Bismillah wa salatu wa salamu ala nabihi wa mustafa, thumma amma ba'd. As-zakah, or almsgiving in Islam, is fard. The word fard means it is mandatory. So it's not something that's optional, that if you offer it and if you give it, then you're a cool guy, and if you don't, then there is no blame on you. No. It is one of the means of determining the faith, the religious commitment, maintain the Islam of a person or else. We find, as you mentioned in your intro, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned the zakah in the Quran repeatedly, at least 20 times along with the salah, joined together. For instance, in Surah Al-Baqarah, in verse number 43, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَأَقِيمُوا الصَّلَاةَ وَآتُوا الزَّكَاةَ, and establish the prayers and give the zakah. And that's why Abu Bakr as-Siddiq says, I'm going to fight against any person who makes any distinction between the salah and the zakah. They're joined together in many verses. So as zakah is a fard, in the hadith which we mentioned in the beginning of the program, the Prophet ﷺ said, بُنِيَ الْإِسْلَامُ عَلَى خَمْسٍ. The third pillar is وَإِيتَاءِ الزَّكَاةِ, and giving the mandatory zakah. Also in verse number 103 of Surah At-Tawbah, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تُطَهِّرُهُمْ وَتُزَكِّيهِمْ بِهَا وَصَلِّ عَلَيْهِمْ إِنَّ صَلَاتَكَ سَكَنٌ لَهُمْ. So this is a command that you must carry out the mission of taking the zakah dues from the rich and distribute it upon those who are entitled for it or the poor.
Okay, now you've said two words there. You said sadaqah in one ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and then the zakah comes in other verses. Now,
I'm glad you brought this up.
Where do we bring that together?
I'm really glad you brought this up, because many people are confused between the term sadaqah and the zakah, to the extent that some people are very generous in giving any charity. In the beginning of Ramadan, they distribute food, sweet and candy, and in Eids, in the beginning of the scholastic year, but they don't pay zakah. When you ask them, they say, well, I'm giving enough. I sponsor orphans, I build schools, I build the masajid. Cool, this is all fine and nice, but you have to understand that this is all voluntary. What's mandatory is the zakah. So the term sadaqah is a general word which means charity. Mutasaddiq is a charitable person. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al-Baqarah, مثل الذين ينفقون أموالهم في سبيل الله كمثل حبة أنبتت 7 سنابل في كل سنبلة 100 حبة والله يضاعف لمن يشاء والله واسع عليم. So this verse covers in general every person who gives any charity. Every charity you give is similar to one who plants or sows one single grain of corn, for instance. Then it grows up to produce a corn stick carrying in each ear of corn 100 more grains. So one grain produces 100. Similarly, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives a parable that one single charity will earn the profit and will foster more profit to be 100 times more. وَاللَّهُ يُضَاعِفُ لِمَنْ يَشَاءُ. And Allah gives and multiplies the reward from ever He wills more than that and beyond that. And Allah is wasi'un alim. He encompasses all the needs of His servants, and He is well aware and all-knowing of what we do. So now, as-sadaqah covers the voluntary charity and the mandatory one. But when we say zakah, then it is referring to the mandatory part, whether in wealth, or sadaqatul fitr, or the zakah on cattle, trades and goods, stuff like that. If you remember a hadith which you quoted, when Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam appointed Mu'adh ibn Jabal, and he deployed him to Yemen, and he gave him the map, how to go about preaching Islam. He said, inform them about the oneness of Allah. And if they respond to that, then inform them that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have ordained 5 daily prayers on them. And if they agree to that, then take them to the next step, that inform them Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained zakah on them to be taken from the rich. He did not say zakah, he said sadaqah. Okay, so the word sadaqah in this hadith, and the word sadaqah of Surah At-Tawbah 103, verse number 103, refers to the specific sadaqah which is mandatory, the zakah.
So now we're going, there's a very good clarification, especially for myself, to understand where these two fit in, and for our brothers and sisters. Now we can look at the rulings again. So you said, for example, that this sadaqah is voluntary, but the zakah now, this is fard, this is obligatory upon us.
Correct.
Okay, so
and that means you may be the most generous person on earth. You may be donating half of your wealth in good causes. But if you're not paying your zakah, that would not avail you an ought against the warning, the severe warning that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala released against those who do not pay their zakah. Let me make it much easier and simpler for you for everybody to understand. What if somebody prays all night long, the night prayer, until his feet swim, but he doesn't pray the fard? How good is that?
Sounds very familiar, that does actually, very familiar.
How good is that? That doesn't make any sense. Okay? So we have to understand that the zakah, you have to be very, very careful with it. When you give any charity, extra or voluntary charity, which is highly recommended, you'll be rewarded for that, definitely. It will cause your wealth to increase. It will protect you and your family from calamities, diseases, and ailments, etc. All of the virtues of sadaqah, which you all know. But when it comes to the zakah, in addition to that, it's a must.
So what about somebody now who, how should we say, he makes sure he does not pay. He says, look, I don't need to pay, you just spoke about it, but you ask him, you tell him, brother, this is something that's mandatory upon you, but he moves away. He abstains from this. What position is he in terms of the Sharia, the Islamic law? What position does he play?
You well, you made it easy for me, because I was going to explain the difference between two different categories of those who do not pay the zakah, similar to the salah or the prayer. There is one who denies its mandate. He says, I'm not going to pay. I pay enough voluntary charity. I don't think that there should be any particular amount of money that's due upon me to give it to the poor. Such person denied the mandate of the zakah. So he denied what Allah stated in the Quran and in the sound traditions of Prophet Muhammad. So he is murtad. Murtad means he turned away from Islam. Such people, such as the people who refused to give the zakah right after the demise of the Prophet
Tell us about this story. Very interesting. What happened to
Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the soft-hearted companion and the best companion of the Prophet ﷺ, led the campaign of fighting against them. Umar ibn Khattab was a little confused, and he said, how can you fight against people who say, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and they pray. They pray regularly. So Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiyallahu ta'ala anhu ardah said, by Allah, لَوْ مَنَعُونِي عَنَاقًا. Anaqan is a female goat which is not even 1 year old. لَوْ مَنَعُونِي عَنَاقًا كَانُوا يُؤَدُّونَهَا لِلنَّبِيِّ صلى الله عليه وسلم لَقَاتَلْتُهُمْ عَلَيْهَا. If they stop paying anything that they used to pay at the time of the Prophet ﷺ, since mandatory and it is the right of the poor, even if it is as little as anaqan. In another narration, عقالا. The iqal is the rope that ties the camel, which is very insignificant. So whether it's a anaq or a iqal, anything that the Prophet ﷺ stated and mandated, any person stops fulfilling this mandate, then I shall fight against them. And he convinced Umar ibn Khattab and all the companions of the Prophet ﷺ, Uthman and Ali and others, and the 10 heavenly bound companions. So they all agreed, and he waged a war against those who stopped paying the zakah, which is known as Hurub al-Riddah, war against apostates, those who turned away from Islam simply for not paying the zakah. This is one category. The second category, if somebody says, well, I know that it's a must and everything, but he's a little miser. He's tied up. He doesn't even give any charity, the voluntary charity. His family are having trouble with him paying their tuitions and their school supplies and all of that. Such person is not a kafir, is not a murtad. He did not deny its mandate. But will we say, okay, you're fine because you're miser and you don't want to pay it, it's up to you as long as you believe in it? No, obviously not. In this case, we will have to force him to pay it. Not we, that's you and me, the state, the Muslim state. It is similar to if you live in the West, for instance, let's say in America, Uncle Sam's tax. If you don't pay it, it will not be only taken, you will be arrested and you will be tried, you will be jailed, etc. This is a zakah that is mandated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it is not much. In America, how much tax you pay? If you're a doctor, for instance, and you make like $300,000-$400,000 a year, you pay 35% and up. Wow. So for each 100,000, that is 35,000 or even more. Wow. Is taken out of your money annually, even before you get your paycheck. In Islam, the zakah rate, as we will get to know, is only 2.5%. What is known as Rub'ul Ushr. Rub'ul Ushr, you know what it means? For each 1,000, you only pay 2.5. If it is euro or dollars, then it's 2.5 of whatever currency you're dealing with. Very little. But for the poor, it accumulates and it builds up. It is very, very significant. It can save the life of those who are struggling to survive.
Jazakallah Shaykh Muhammad for all your explanations. A very good lesson for us that zakah is not something simple, something that we see written as the 5 pillars and something that we understand. It's something that we've got to look into, something we've got to investigate. It affects all of us, and that's what we're hoping to do in this program of Fiqh of Zakah. I hope you join me next time on this episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Give a little of yourself. Cure your greed, purify your wealth. Look around at where you live. Look at all the good you have to give. Give a little of yourself. There's a hand somewhere to hold, a mouth to feed. There's so much that we can do for so many who are in need. Give our time, give our wealth, give our love, give ourselves. Know Allah sees each and every hidden deed.